where everyone is connected. So the distribution of the trade volume is with respect to exports and imports. You see, the key exporters are these countries and others 42%. Importers, the key importers are these countries: Canada, Germany, Japan, China, Mexico, United States, France, South Korea, and others 37%. Right? So it means your import and exports are also connected with the world economy. Now, trend in the US balance of trade. So, because this book is US centric, so you can replace it with your own country's data as well. The fundamentals remain the same. So the US balance of trade deficit increased substantially from 1997 to 2008. So by the way, what is trade deficit? Anyone want to share the light on this trade deficit? What is trade?
More than export.
What?
Importing more than exporting.
Well done. Yeah, your imports are more than your exports. And recall our discussion from previous class that deficit is not good for developed country. But see, US is developed country and it has increased its deficit. It means something we have missing here, right? In the absence of any information, we talked about that the trade deficit is bad for developed country, but good for developing country, right? So let's talk about this. In 2008 and 9, so what happened here? Why the deficit is substantially increasing? Maybe due to outsourcing. So this era is called the golden era of technology boom and all those stuff, right? So US is shifting its economy towards service economy. So all those manufacturing facilities, it is outsourcing to the world. In that case, he has to import more and then focusing on its technology. And after that, it is distributing its technology to the world, right? So in that case, the trade deficit increased. So in the era of, or in the year of 2008 and 9, the US economic condition weakened and the US demand for foreign products and services decreases. Why? Due to Great Depression, subprime mortgage crisis. What happened? When crises occur, people, they don't want to buy imported stuff. Even they don't want to buy the luxury stuff or the things that are not necessary. So their demand decreases for even locally and internationally, right? So in recent years, annual balance of trade deficit with China exceed 200 billion, and now it is more than 400 billion, because we're talking about this in 2010, but now this is 2021. Look at that, the challenges. So any country's balance of trade can change substantially over time, of course. Here we go. So you see the balance of trade. So this is year, and this is basically trade deficit. You see, it is basically increasing. And when it hit the crisis, it was the lowest at that time. Consumption decreased. What happened? You are still importing the goods, but you are not exporting to the other countries. And what happened? Your manufacturing sector has shifted to the outside world, right? For consumption purposes, you are importing stuff from outside country, right? So that would happen. And now factors affecting international trade flows. Cost of labor, number one. So firms in countries where labor costs are low, they have advantage when competing globally, especially in labor-intensive industry. Which is the labor-intensive industries? All the manufacturing industry is basically labor-intensive. right? Making automobiles, making computers, laptops, mobile phone. You need a lot of factories and you need a lot of workers. So a major part is also the, so it consists of prime cost. If you studied the managerial accounting, so you heard over there the word conversion cost and prime cost. Prime cost is basically consists of direct material plus direct labor. It's a huge cost, so they want to decrease it. So that's why they receive more orders. The with that country receive more orders in which labor cost is lower, right? So that's why you are seeing a rising economy as Bangladesh, very rapidly rising economy. Why? Because over there labor cost is very cheap, and due to this international trade and logistics stuff, supply chain stuff, now providing raw material to any parts of the world is not this dream, it's reality. You can provide, you can reach to the raw material and a minimum cost, and you can provide that raw material to any parts of the world. The thing is, labor cost must be cheap. Number two, inflation. So current account decreases if inflation increases. Wow, what an argument. What do you think about this? Can you elaborate this one? If in a country inflation is high, right? What happened? Current account decreases if inflation is high. Amazing. Because consumers and corporation in that country will most likely to purchase more goods overseas, while the country's exports to other countries will decline, right? So when you are two trade partners, if in one country inflation is high, what happened? It means people have more money. When people have more money, they want to buy more imported stuff. So their imports gonna increases, right? Increases. And exports, their products are looks more expensive to outside world, their exports decreases. So that's why your current account decreases. You are going towards deficit rather than surplus. Everyone, do I need to explain one more time, or you understand that? This is really, at this moment, this concept is at infancy, and you need to master that one. Otherwise, in coming lectures, it's going to be heavily used. Over there, it will be very hard for me to explain one more time. So you need to digest this concept right here. Everybody understand that? Yes.
I think when you say inflation, do you mean inflation as the cost of life or inflation as the rate of change when you change the currency?
Okay, we need to explain this. I got it. Just wait a second.
No, because one affects, okay, if the rate is higher, obviously the export will be lower. But if the cost of, I think both actually, if the cost of life is higher, I will buy outside of the country.
Other name is cost of life, other name is purchasing power, the other name is increase in prices. It's one and the same stuff. So let me explain this. Okay, so we just discussed in our whiteboard that if the inflation rises, what happens? The country have a rising price levels. So it is, the exports going to decrease. Why? Because the foreign countries people, they find the inflated countries product very expensive. In that way, the inflation, the country with inflation, it experience less exports, while the people in inflated prices country, they find options of other countries to buy the product. It means their imports rises. In that case, the current account will go towards the deficit. It means it's going towards decrease in stuff. Why? Because exports minus imports, exports are decreasing, imports are rising. So answer is going to be decreasing. Right, guys? Now the national income. Now what happened? So what if the GDP rises or disposable income rises? So current account also decreases. Amazing. The inflation is basically when you have a money supply, but if the national income rises, what if the country as a whole producing more goods and services, right? Not the prices are increasing, the product, okay. The product price, total sales include price multiplied by the quantity. Inflation is when just price rises, quantity remains the same. So we call this inflation. But what if prices are also rising and quantity is also rising? So we call this economic growth, real economic growth. Real economic growth is when GDP increase with the output increase. But what if country is also producing more and inflation is also there? Even then, the effect is like that. If you have more money, right, you can afford imported goods. So you will spend a lot of money on luxury goods even, right? So those previously you cannot afford good Chinese cars. Now you can import the Chinese cars. You can import many other stuff from China. Or you want to, having some Chinese medicines and all those stuff. So you want to import those. Why? Because now people can afford these kind of costly herbs, right? So in that case, your imports rising and your exports started to decrease. Why? Why is that? Even if your exports increases because you are increasing the output, but your import rises rapidly than your exports because people have more money. When people have money, people want to buy the products where they find it cheaper and satisfying. So if they are given choices of locally produced and imported goods, so they will buy from that country which is cheaper and quality oriented, right? Because they have the money. When they have the money, they will spend, wisely. They want to pay less and of the same quality. But inside the country, due to inflation and all those stuff, it's costly for them. So imports rises, right? Even though their production rises, but the effect is that both rises. Exports are also rises, but imports it rises more than exports. That's a little tricky part. But the overall effect is that inflation and national income, the difference is that when there is inflation, what happens? Your current account deficit decreases, okay, decreases. But when the national income rises, what happened? The consumption part rises. Locally consumption also rises. Now, for example, previously you were buying, for example, you were eating from locally restaurants, and now you have more money. You are eating in high-end restaurants, Chinese restaurants, right? So you are starting your consumption more, and due to more consumption, your demand for imported goods also rises. But the overall effect is the same. Current account decreases, current account decreases. So current account decreases if national income increases relative to other country. A percentage of increase in consumption will most likely to reflect an increased demand for foreign product.